Today, I want to talk to you about how to change text in a Unity game based on what you pick up. So you might use this for something like a message system that responds to your actions that you take in the game. But today, I just want to use this very simple platformer as an example of how you can go about doing this. So the major thing that you need to make sure is set up in any game that you use, but feel free to use the example that I've given a link to in the description below, is a game manager class. You need to make sure that you have a game manager class set up in your game. And this is going to use a script that I've written and I'll explain later on. It's a really simple script in this case because we're only holding on to a tiny bit of information, but it affects everything in your game because the game manager class is something that essentially hangs around outside of the game world. Like, it doesn't even need to be an object in your game scene. There's nothing attached to it. But because of the way a game manager class should be set up, it should be able to affect everything in the game by storing information in a way that can allow you to change the way your game is playing, change the state that the game is in at that time, and lots of other variables and values. I'm going to be using a really simple game manager class today. Nothing too complicated, but game managers do get quite complicated and they can enable you to have a huge amount of control. So do look at those, and another thing called finite state machines and persistent values that you can have in Unity projects. But for now, if you want to set up your own game manager class, go ahead and make a new object. You can name it game manager. And then what I'm going to do is throw my game manager script right onto that empty object. And that would, in this case, make it a game manager object. And you can use that as a template to help you control variables in the games that you're making. And, feel free to edit this as you like. For now, though, you'll see that the game manager class that I've written is extremely simple. And in fact, it's not even really what you would call a usual game manager because this is set up only to be accessible within this scene. And usually you would want your game manager to be accessible in lots of other scenes. But this just has one major method that's called update score that can be accessed by all of the other objects in this particular scene and allows us to keep track of a score that can trigger the next piece of dialogue that we're going to use in the game. That leads on to kind of an important point, which is that the dialogue in this game is created using something called ink. You're going to want to make sure that you go to the Inkle Studios website and download Inkle before you begin a game that has a dialogue system like the one that I'm showing you here. Now, to be clear, the Inkle Institute are not just the people that have made the scripting language that we're going to use. They have also helped create games. They're the recipient of an Epic Mega Grant, and they have made not just one tool for editing game dialogue, but a whole scripting language and accessible tools that can be used by lots of people. But for our purposes, what we want is to download the Inky editor that can help us create ink scripts that we're going to use in our Unity games. So if you go ahead and grab the Inky editor, download that and make sure that it's running. The next thing that we need to ensure that we're able to do is import the ink for Unity layer into our game as well. Once you've headed to the Unity Asset Store, you'll be able to click the Add to My Assets button. That will give you the option to add this to your account if you're signed into Unity and have a Unity account. That will be added to your assets, which you'll then be able to open in Unity. And if you have Unity open and running at that time, what should happen, theoretically, is that it should go directly to your package manager. If not, you can always open the package manager yourself. And you should see ink is now added to your project. You might have to download it or import it into your project yourself, but it really should work. Once you've done that, you'll be able to have a look at ink files in Unity. You'll be able to open those yourself or even create new ink files within Unity that can help provide dialogue for your games. Ink stories work using a really simple process where you have an arrow that points to a defined keyword, which then links to that keyword surrounded by 3 equal signs. So you have first, second, and ending here, each linked to the next section by an arrow, and then a final arrow linking to the end. In our example here, we're going to do something even simpler. We are going to just use a first and second, which then points to done. So basically there's 2 things that are going to show up in our game, as you saw in the example at the very beginning. All right, but all of that is dependent on an object that I have called top dialog section. Okay, and the top dialog section is just my name that I gave to some TextMesh Pro objects that can display the ink text that we've set up and also manage how that ink text is displayed by using some fairly simple and straightforward scripts. So you can see here that if you have the top dialog space object as a TextMesh Pro and then drop my script top dialog on top of it, you'll be able to get started. Having a look at that top dialog class, you might initially be a little overwhelmed depending on how familiar you are with scripting, but all that there really is that's going on here is just a TextMesh Pro UGUI object, which of course means that you're going to have to import TextMesh Pro using TMP at the beginning of your Unity script using tmpro. And that TextMesh Pro is just a sort of fancy text object that you're going to tell Unity exactly what it is inside the editor. You're also going to define an ink JSON, which will be the ink asset that you use, and then also call that as a private story object, which is just what Unity is essentially going to think of the ink JSON at runtime. Once you have those things declared in this class, it's important that you work through this in stages just to see exactly how this works out. So when the script is initialized through the private void awake method, what's first going to happen is it's going to double check that this is the only one of these top dialog managers in the scene. Now, you can have different dialog managers to handle different things, but it's good practice just to make sure that you only have one dialog manager for each kind of purpose. So in this case, we have one dialog manager for top dialog. We're also going to use this quick check to make sure that controls are enabled. This is only really relevant if you're using Unity's new input system, which personally I prefer to use. I find it a little bit easier than hard coding each key as you go along, but I know that some people's preferences vary on that. So after this is initialized and once the game actually starts, we're going to go ahead with our start method in which we will assign the current story to the ink JSON text that we'll define in the editor. That just means that Unity can engage with this ink JSON text at runtime without having to make lots of calls that could end up giving you a null exception. We're also going to just give some initial text there where I've said quiet so far. That's just what's going to pop up at the beginning of the game. Importantly, then we have these 2 integers, previous score and new score. And these are important for the game manager just to make sure that the game manager is able to keep track of everything as it occurs. And then finally, we'll put in this check to make sure that dialogue is playing and set that to true at the beginning, because with this top dialogue space, we're not waiting on things to happen. We want dialogue to be kind of always playing because it's listening to our actions and responding to what we pick up in the gameplay. If you want to customize this a bit more, this was where you would initialize any more like GUI elements if you wanted to. For an example, I've just used the continue arrow just to show you that essentially different visual objects can be triggered by this script as well. In our update, however, so in the kind of main loop of Unity, what we're mainly doing is updating the new score integer by checking the game manager game object. Okay, so we're using this game object.find game manager get component method that's built into Unity, and we're checking the game manager's GM score integer as well. Okay, so basically whatever the score that's being currently stored in the game manager is, that's what's going to be shown as the new score here. Then what happens is if their previous score, which starts off as 0, is less than new score, we're going to print out something just to let us know that that has gone successfully. We're going to change our integer of previous score to be equal to the new score, and then we're going to finally call our continue story method, which is where kind of all the magic happens. At the same time, just to show you that it's possible, I'm also triggering the continue arrow visual element here as well. So anytime essentially we pick up a new object, we are going to tell the game manager that we've achieved something, that we've added something to the score, and that's going to show visual elements, and it's going to use this continue story method. And the continue story method essentially is a built-in method for the Unity Inc. And it says if the story can continue, it will start this coroutine. It will play the next part of the dialogue, or else it will start a coroutine that exits out of dialogue mode and closes the current dialogue that's playing. Now, the only reason this is done through a coroutine is because of a small glitch that exists, but if you just follow that code, it'll be absolutely fine. The last thing to pay attention to is a script that will be added to any of the objects we're actually going to bump into in the game. So these are the little coins that I have in the game. And all we're doing here is saying that these coins need to make a call to the game manager, some game manager. Then when the game starts, we're going to say that the game manager it's calling to is specifically the game manager that you can find by searching for its name. And then anytime there is an on trigger enter event, the coins are going to be destroyed and the game manager's score is going to be updated. And I have just said to update that by 5. You can set that to whatever you want it to be. You could even make a public variable and edit that in Unity's editor, depending on how you're feeling. But that score is never shown to the player in this version of the game. It's just important because it allows the Inc dialogue to continue playing. So if you have your top dialogue object sorted out in the Unity editor, what you're able to do is click and drag any Inc JSON that you might have pre-made, and it will play those dialogue samples as you pick up coins and move throughout the game. Okay, well, I hope that made some sense and hope this was useful in some way. And if there's anything else that I can try to help you with, just let me know.